Hello, Andrew.
I've given up my hosting duties on this one.
First of all, thank you, Andrew, for hosting that the special edition fantasy football podcast earlier. That was really well done. I'm very proud of your effort.
You're welcome, and I'm proud of my effort as well.
Well, very
modest.
Yeah, I'm very modest. Andrew is here, but now we couldn't do this without our very own Hebrew Hammer. By the way, this is his first appearance since I moved to LA. Did you know this?
Wow.
Yeah. What took you so long, Jake? I mean,
he is farther away now.
Yeah.
I don't really know what took me so long. So number one quarterback is obviously Brett Favre now, right? That's consensus.
Well, I don't have him ranked number one. I do have him number 3, however, on my quarterbacks list.
Really?
No. Absolutely not.
Are you shitting me? You gotta be kidding me, right? I'm glad to hear no.
We actually avoided talking about Brett Favre too much on the last show. So I think he has very limited to hardly any fantasy value whatsoever.
I think he could be a guy that you may want to keep on your bench around for a bye week.
Yeah.
Or even pick up if he's available on the waiver for a bye week or something like that. I don't think that's a problem. I mean, it really depends on who they're facing. You also got to think, he is going to be in a dome, even though he's never played well in a dome. I can't imagine that he's going to play terribly for 8 games. So I think that's got to be a help. And the fact that he's not going to be taking on the brunt of the offense because they have arguably the best running back in football.
Arguably? He is the best running back in football. He's the best.
Yeah, well, that's my point.
What is there to argue?
That's kind of the point.
So Jacob, Brett Favre's fine. He's backup quarterback and everything. We were talking about earlier some of the different guys who have a little bit of question marks this year. Let me just bring up a few, and then you can go ahead and tell us what you think about these guys. Brady, how's he going to come back this year? Terrell Owens now moving to Buffalo. Jay Cutler moving to Chicago. Brian Westbrook getting older, and LaDainian Tomlinson. What do you think about some of those guys?
Well, Brady, you got to think about Brady. He's obviously not going to. You're not going to take him before Peyton or Drew Brees. I think that's pretty obvious. He could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I think that's perfectly reasonable. He maybe even be the 3rd best fantasy quarterback.
I have him number 2 on my list.
As good as they were in 2007, but I can't imagine them completely falling off as far as on offense. They still have tons of weapons. He's still going to rack up a lot of yards just simply because. How many receptions is what's his face, the little guy, going to get there in that offense? Just because Randy Moss.
Welker will probably get about 215 catches.
Welker, right? Welker with an H at the end or something.
That's
like that.
right. That's right.
Chowder or whatever. Who gives a fuck? But that guy, he's going to get a lot of yards, and so Randy Moss is still
get the
there.
bleep machine ready.
It's the Patriots. I think he could be a number 3 quarterback. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Because, who's better than him beyond Peyton and Breeze that you can definitely say is better than him?
No, that's a very good point. And I think most of us have him ranked at least in the top 5. I have him ranked 4th. You have him ranked 3rd,
yeah,
Jake?
No, I'm not saying he's 3rd. I'm saying he could be. I think he's right up there with guys like, Romo, Warner, if he can have the year that he had, which I think is a big question mark. Rivers, Rodgers, all those cats, those guys are all kind of in that range. Would you guys agree with that?
I actually have Brady as number 2 on my list in the quarterback.
Really? Where do you have Peyton and Breeze? I don't see how he's better than those two guys.
Well, Breeze is number 1. Breeze is number 1. Peyton is number 3 or 4, and then I have Aaron Rodgers mixed in there as well.
Okay, and I think that's pretty legitimate. The reason why I really feel that I would take Peyton over Brady, even though I would take Breeze over all those guys, I think that he's a sure number 1, is just because I feel like there's more of a chance that he's going to have a better year. I think he's got less question marks than Brady. But I could legitimately see Brady as a 2. I don't think that's a problem. I just would feel safer taking Peyton if he's my quarterback. Granted, I always think Peyton always gets taken too soon anyways. But
I think Peyton is sliding back again. I think he'll be fine, but I don't think he's what Peyton Manning used to be or is what we know.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that, but I just feel safer with him opposed to all those other guys that I mentioned, including Brady, just because of the knee injury, and we don't really know how quickly it's going to take for them to get in the rhythm. And it's not like he won a whole lot of people championships that year anyways, because it wasn't like Week 16 and they were dominating anyway. They really slowed down after a while. During the rest of the year, Jesus, it was phenomenal, but they slowed down quite a bit at the end of the season, and that's really what matters.
Yeah, they did.
Trying to win a championship, right?
Jake, LaDainian Tomlinson, what do you think?
Oh, LP, he's definitely a first round back.
I think we stumped him on this one, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow. We've rendered Jacob speechless. The hammer has been stifled.
Well, you got to understand also, like, I am the guy, I've had a lot of, I've stuck with LP for quite some time now. I'm the guy who's always sided with him. I like LP, not as a player, not not as a person necessarily, or as a teammate, but his talent, if he could have been able to continue to do what he was doing without the injuries, he just might have been one of the more productive running backs that we've ever seen. He's a very gifted player, a very gifted athlete. He seems to be back and healthy, but you can't just think that he's going to be back to his old ways. I would like to say he's probably top 5, but he's not top 3 or anything like that. Possibly. I think like guys like he's going to be back there with guys like Steven Jackson.
Dave, did you hear Steven Jackson?
Oh, here we go. Steven Jackson. Now, see, Tomlinson, I give him a shot. Steven Jackson, he's got plenty of chances to come back, and he hasn't. He's played like 3 games,
Really?
I think, in 2 seasons.
Are you sure about that?
Jacob,
I would take Steven Jackson over Frank Gore personally. I don't know what you're talking. Steven Jackson.
when he's healthy, he's fantastic. I know that, but he's not going to be healthy. That's the
How do we
problem.
know that? You don't. Isn't that the risk you take with any running back? We're talking about running backs here. Name one running back who's going to stay healthy. I'll bet you $100 about any running back that's going to stay healthy next year. Please, are you willing to do that? It's the running back position.
And I actually think
it's the risk you take with everybody.
And I actually think when you look at like even a guy like Adrian Peterson, who everybody's like obvious number 1 pick, this is a guy who got injured all the freaking time in college. There's no guarantee. He's been injured he's been healthy since he's been in the NFL, but there's certainly no guarantee that he's going to be healthy all year.
Steven Jackson played 12 games last year? That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Am I right or wrong about that?
Okay, fine. Let's say he played 12 games.
He still broke 1,000 yards.
All right. We need to go over this in ProFootballReference.com. Seriously, this is nuts. I don't remember him being that great last year. I'll look it up. I'm going to look it up right now. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm definitely here.
All right.
Most certainly here.
We need to get over this.
I'm looking it up right now. Let's see. Week 16, he went for 108 yards and no touchdowns, 2 receptions, and 11 yards off that. In Week 17, even though it wouldn't have counted for fantasy, he had 161 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Well,
Week 7, he had 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yes, he was hurt throughout the middle of the season, but
Jake.
What's that?
Jake, here's his stats from last season. Last season, he rushed for 1,042 yards. He had 7 rushing touchdowns and 8 touchdowns total. So he caught a touchdown pass, and he started 11 games and played in 12. So those were his stats from last year. The year before, he also played in 12 games only. So he has missed 4 games both the last 2 years.
Yeah, you have to understand, Jake. 4 games is 1/4 of the season.
But this is my point. I'm not saying this is what I'm trying to tell you. If you're concerned about Steven Jackson staying healthy, then you're going to have the same concern as Mike Tomlinson or as LaDainian Tomlinson. So what's your point? Like, they're the same amount of risk. I'm saying he's even with those guys.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're going to draft Steven Jackson over LT because you think he's going to stay more healthy, or vice versa, you're kidding yourself. So I'm agreeing with you, Dave. I'm not disagreeing with you here. That makes sense.
I think we have the right basic general idea. We both think they're both injury risks. I think that's true.
And that includes Frank Gore, D'Angelo Williams. I mean, how are these guys any different than what I'm talking about here? Those guys are all complete injury risks. They're great when they're healthy, but when they're not, it's a risk you take. You know, that's. I mean, Frank Gore, obviously, everybody's saying that he's going to have a bounce back year. They're going to run the football more. I'm not sold. When has he been healthy? That guy in every single game on key third downs takes himself out of the game because he's too tired or he's hurt.
Jake,
Every single game. And I'm a Niner fan. I love Frank Gore. But let's be honest here. That guy does that in every single game. So why should I guarantee a guy like that as much as Steven Jackson or any of those other guys?
Jake, what do you think about Jay Cutler in Chicago?
Well, that's a jump. You just jumped all the way from that to quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'm kind of done with the whole running back.
I like Jay Cutler in Chicago. I think it'll be fun. I like Jay Cutler no matter where he's at.
Wow. Oh, Jake,
I don't know.
Jake Cutler, man crush here almost. Who is this? Ernest?
No,
is this Ernest on the phone?
He's the guy who's going to put up big points for you. He's going to get, you know, maybe he won't get a touchdown in game, but you bank that he might. I mean, it depends where he's going. Like, if I want a quarterback in a round and, you know, Tom Brady's there, I'm taking Tom Brady. If I have Aaron Rodgers there, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. But if he's there, I'm not afraid to take him. Why would I be afraid to take him? I don't think he's going to be a bust or anything like that.
Well,
I think he'll be just fine. He's not going to do what he did in Denver. There's no doubt about that. But
to me,
produce. That's the point.
Jake. To me, he's not a number one starting fantasy quarterback anymore. Being in Chicago,
I could somewhat agree with that, but I mean,
he's a backup.
It depends on where you draft him. You know, if you're taking a quarterback a little bit later because you've stacked another position, I think he's a fine guy to put in, and it's also one of those things where I think when you get stuck in a position like that, you generally draft two quarterbacks anyways, knowing that that's going to happen, and you're going to switch guys in and out based on the matchup. So would I want him as my number one quarterback? Probably not, but I think you find a draft at a certain point.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that.